Born and raised on a Southern Idaho farm, he went from potatoes and sugar beets to the front lines of national politics. He's chased a billionaire tech exec all across the state of California in pursuit of the top job. He served as national deputy political director of a presidential campaign. Todd Cranney is co-founder and partner of Riverwood Strategies, guiding clients through high-stakes policy and strategy battles. But even he has seen meetings go down in flames. Let's hear about his worst meeting ever. Todd, we're so glad you're here. Thanks so much for joining us on Worst Meeting Ever. Tell us, what is the day-to-day of running a public policy and strategy firm?
Well, thanks for having me. It's exciting to be here. And man, the questions you've asked about this worst meeting thing have given me a lot of thought. So it's going to be interesting to delve into that a little bit.
For sure.
So, it's interesting. I would say that there's a lot of diversity in running a firm like I run. I mean, a lot of different things. You don't necessarily know what's going to happen in a day because you can have a very calm day. There's not a lot going on. There's scheduled things you're doing. You're working on client issues. They're paced to a certain deadline, but it's a very far out deadline, and you know what you're doing. But then things happen, right?
Yeah.
Things wake you, or a client's not happy, and all of a sudden you've got things in your, like this morning when I had to jump on a call with a client who was very unhappy with the way certain thing was going, and you're spending all your time kind of talking through with them what they're not happy about and how you kind of fix it, and some of it, what they're unhappy about was a little bit unreasonable, and some of it may be reasonable.
No.
So it never happens.
Clients are unreasonable once in a while?
No, it never happens. But we do a lot of different work, and I put it in different buckets. I mean, we have the political work we do for campaigns, and those are those are very unpredictable.
Yeah.
The process is predictable to a degree, but it's unpredictable in terms of they're very much sprints.
Yeah.
They're very much, kind of a marathon at a sprint pace is kind of how I describe it.
Right.
And then we have more of our corporate work that can be predictable in terms of there's a long-term issue that we're working on that we're trying to accomplish something with. But then things can pop up and it's like, crisis communication type pieces that happen all the time. And then there's government affairs type work that we do in support of a big effort, whether it be, education reform. I'm just making this up, but or immigration reform or energy reforms, whatever's kind of happening in DC or at maybe one of the state capitals across the West. A lot of the work we do is focused in the Western U.S. and kind of the Intermountain West, particularly Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, Montana. We've done work obviously in California and other places. And we do a lot of work with guys out of DC about an issue, maybe it's federal or there's a state level issue, and that could impact a corporate client or it could impact a more of like a trade association.
Yeah.
And so it varies because one day can be really calm and then the next moment it can be a big explosion. Some of that can be an explosion based on like an external event.
Sure.
And we live, obviously politically everything's very fluid and a lot of things are happening. But then sometimes it can be kind of a man-made crisis from the client who's panicking or upset or not happy with what's going on based on something perhaps it's reasonable and perhaps it's not. So a lot of variation, a lot of diversity of like what's going to happen. You don't know. Like this morning I woke up thinking everything's pretty good. It's going to be a pretty calm day. And then immediately I had to jump on a call and deal with an issue. That's why I was out in the parking lot late for a few minutes trying to calm someone down a little bit. I'm not quite sure I got the job done, but I didn't get fired. So
one step at a time.
So I must be okay. I think I'm okay.
That's hilarious.
But yeah.
That's funny.
There's a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Volatility and being a psychologist sometimes. And then I need a psychologist. That's why I'm grateful to have my wife. So
little did she know what she was signing up for.
She did not know what she was. She thought she knew, but it's like everything else in life. You think you know what you're signing up for. You really don't know until you know.
That's awesome. Well, I'm really intrigued about your firm because it's obviously like so different from running a software company, right? And so like if you had to split your meetings maybe into 3 or 4 categories and think about like how many, what are those categories and how many of those do you do a week typically?
Yeah, a lot of meetings. I mean, we are in a very people-intensive business, which is part of what I like and don't like sometimes, right? It just all depends, right? But I would say, to answer your question directly, I mean, there's a mixture of, like, I would say, client meetings, which would be, servicing clients that we do work for, either talking to them, reporting to them, talking to them. There's then meetings that we're doing on behalf of the clients that we're, to execute the work we need to get done for them. So that's another bucket that I would say. Then there's a bucket of prospective client meetings you're doing, things that you're doing always to kind of look for future prospective clients. And then there's probably a fourth bucket of like relationship meetings that you do. And those are a mixture. I mean, I've found the best way to get clients is obviously to do a good job for them.
Sure.
But it's also to just, when you do the right thing and you are genuinely interested in people, which I am, and you form genuine friendships, which is what is most important to me.
Yeah.
The clients come because people they are looking for people who are genuine, people who are sincere, and I love that. And so it's very important to me in my business because I enjoy it, but it's also I am in my business we are in the friendship business. I mean, that's really what I'm in.
Right.
And you have to maintain those friendships in a sincere way. And so I try to devote time to that because I enjoy it. That's actually the most enjoyable part of what I do.
Yeah.
But also because it is very important to my business. And so that's how I break down the relationships. It's I think to your point you make about like how different it is. Meg Whitman actually asked me once what I thought the biggest difference between politics and business was. Yeah. And I was first caveated this with saying, well, I'm not, I've been involved in some businesses, but I don't have any level of expertise in business.
Not quite running eBay and HP.
That she has, or that you have, or other, full-time business guys have. But my experience in it, I said there's kind of two things. One that surprised her, which is, business is a relationship business. It's a very intensive, but the intense nature of the relationship business and what we do is so intense because a lot of it really is relationships. Yeah. And there's not a lot of other stuff going on. So even Meg, who was a great people person and loved people, she was surprised about how intense it was with people and how it can wear you out because it's just like the level of
extroversion that you have to have.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's one difference, I think. The other difference I told her that you'll appreciate is that, Meg, in a business, you can run a really successful business and as long as you're profitable, you're going on in the next quarter. You can finish second to your competitor and be profitable, right? In politics, you can run a really great campaign and still lose, and there are no points for second place. You're not going on to the next. You're not going on to the next quarter. You're done. Right. And then winners get to write history, and then you were a loser no matter what. So so that's kind of I think those are two big differences between politics and business, among others. But those are things that I always think a little bit about and then I kind of ebb back and forth a little bit, involved in some businesses, particularly our farm. Sit on the board there, but again, I don't pretend to have the level of expertise in business that others do, but it's kind of fun to have. That's the other luxury that my business allows me the ability to stay involved in our farm. It allows me the ability to do some other business ventures that I like.
Kind of a foot in both worlds.
Exactly. It's given me a chance to do that, which I do really enjoy.
All right. Well, so let's get to it. Hit me. Your worst meeting ever.
Oh, I have really struggled to answer this question.
Okay.
Because I've thought a lot about it.
Well, you got to keep the relrelationships up, so we're not going to ask you to name any names. Let's be clear.
No lie. I mean, I think, it really hasn't been about trying to hide from people's names. It's been I really struggled, and I thought through my career because it's just kind of an amalgamation of types of meetings. So maybe I'll give you a little different spin on. I kind of meetings. I'll tell you one funny story that I think was a great story, and then a couple others. And this story actually doesn't involve me, but it involves my oldest brother.
Okay.
Who was a partner in Andreessen Horowitz, and it's a legendary story of a meeting he had. And so he went out actually to help a buddy of his. He got a call. This was before he earlier in his business career, and he gets this call from his buddy to come out and help him close a deal. Okay. And it's a software deal. He gets called out. His buddy's meeting with the CEO and the CFO of the business. They're trying to close the deal. My brother comes in, and they're haggling back and forth on the software deal. And all of a sudden, my brother, he just says, time out. He's like, my brother cuts in. He's like, time out. He's like, hey, listen, Santa Claus is dead. Santa Claus is dead. And the CEO and then his buddy, I'm not gonna name any names, his buddy was just like, just in shock.
What are you doing?
And he's like, that's exactly what he's doing. And he goes, Santa Claus is dead. And so the CEO, obviously, they're all looking at him like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And he goes, well, you know why I know Santa Claus is dead? It's because my old man shot him. He says, when I was a little kid, we were crying and whining about the Christmas Eve, and our old man warned us that if we didn't be quiet, he was going to go out and shoot Santa Claus. And so true to form, and please do not judge my dad, who's one of the greatest men in the world and my hero, by the way. He actually went outside and fired off his shotgun on the farm a couple times and probably traumatized my brother and younger sister, my oldest brother, oldest sister, who were the only ones. But anyway, so he goes, so I know Santa Claus is dead. And he goes, there are no more gifts. And so up jumps his buddy, and he's like, time out. He's like, we got to take a break. So they take a break from the meeting, and his buddy's in his ear. He's like, Cranney, you just screwed up the still. You screwed up the still. You follow me out here. I got to have the still. And my brother's like, oh no, you watch. This deal's gonna get done next few minutes. Yeah. And his buddy's like, no way. He goes, you're not going back in there. And my brother's like, I'm going back in there. I won't say anything, but I'm going back in there. So they roll back into the meeting, and the CEO goes, you know what? That was the craziest story I've ever heard. But you're right. Let's get this thing over with. And they boom, they cut and close the deal, and they were done. So we always joke around that Santa Claus is not dead. So
that is really funny.
Was not the worst meeting ever, because it turned out pretty good. But if you asked his buddy, it was probably one of the worst meetings he was ever in, up until the point the deal got closed. So I would say that. I mean, and then I would just say hilarious. Like it's kind of an amalgamation as I think through it. I mean, I can tell you, man, like growing up on a family farm business back in the day with my dad and his two brothers that were the original kind of partners in that business. I've been in some farm meetings that were, I mean, oh my heavens. I mean,
okay, come on. Now take us into one farm meeting.
Oh, I mean, you go into a farm meeting and have a disagreement, and it almost turns into fisticuffs.
But about what? Like take us into one.
Well, just disagreement over, strategically where the farm might go on anything, honestly. I mean,
got it.
That's the thing I will say is it's the worst meeting, but it's the best meeting, because what I learned from them, and then the next generation, my cousins and my brother, better at this. I mean, it's much more buttoned down, calm meetings. But what I did appreciate and learn from that was, in a way, it's the worst meeting because they're contentious and they were aggressive, and there was a lot of yelling and some inappropriate language that was non-church approved, and there was potentially some physical pieces. But two principles I did learn from them that was really amazing was, one, they were honest with each other, and they said what they had to say in that meeting.
Yeah,
and they really did. They aired it out, and they said what they had to say.
Yeah.
But then the second piece that I learned about them was they'd say it in private.
Yep.
They'd make a decision, and even if all three of them didn't agree, whatever majority, they'd come to a decision. Then they went out the door, and then they locked arms together and worked together to make it happen. And it was over.
It
wasn't this, it wasn't my decision and cover my behind when it didn't work or try to undermine it. It was, maybe one of them, of the partners, did not like the decision, but they rolled out the door and they worked together, and it was their decision together. And even if they didn't love it, but they went and tried to make it happen.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated about them,
for sure,
because that's how they operated. And I think the next generation is kind of does that too, but maybe now we just have a little less of non-church approved language.
Less shooting Santa Claus.
And a lot more structure. I mean, the farm's evolved now, and that business. And I think that's another piece of, like, going to your question about worst meetings is, I think what happens with worst meetings is, I do think it's important that you create a situation where the dialogue can occur appropriately.
Sure,
maybe more so than Cranney Farms back in the day. But the worst meetings I've seen are the ones that are not structured well, or don't have anyone that's like a facilitator, someone who facilitates it and keeps it on the rails and drives to an agenda and an action item and makes it happen. And I've seen a few of those, quite frankly, like a lot of those. And those are the worst meetings that I see.
Yeah. It's really profound, though, what you were saying about the meetings on the farm, because, the two points that you raised there are like some of the best practices for best meetings that exist. The first one that you were talking about being very frank and candid with people. Like, I agree with the other points you're making about bad meetings, no facilitator, no clear agenda, no clear objective. Super, those are the ingredients of bad meetings for sure. But the other one is like where it's a very polite meeting, where everybody actually disagrees under the surface, but nobody's willing to say it. And it's a complete waste of time because nothing actually gets hashed out. Like as it turns out, Patrick Lencioni, one of the great writers and I would say disciples of good meetings and good leadership, talks about conflict is good. Like productive conflict about ideas is actually good.
Very good.
And then the second point you're making is, I don't know if you ever heard it, but like Andy Grove at Intel invented that framework called disagree and commit. And how hilarious that Cranney Farms, the last generation was implementing a framework that like a Hungarian immigrant, running a microprocessor company, kind of did to try to get Intel to settle down and learn how to work together, to vehemently disagree in meetings, but then turn around and commit to the decision once it's made.
Yes.
And get behind that decision and execute it, make it work.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the problems we have in society as a whole is that
So true.
I think people don't. We're losing the ability to agree to disagree, but also to disagree agreeably. I mean, and what I mean by that is that just because you disagree with someone's idea doesn't mean that you personally don't like them or you don't personally value them. And I think it's hard for people sometimes to separate their ideas or their opinions from who they are, and to know that like, hey, just because someone's attacking maybe your idea or your opinion, it doesn't mean they're attacking your intelligence or your abilities, or they just disagree with you, and that's okay. And I definitely did learn that from my dad and my uncles, that you can disagree with people and still like them and still get along with them. But it's hard, and a lot of people,
it's hard work.
A lot of people cannot do that, and it was hard on the farm, and it's hard in the work that I do. That people have a hard time with it. I get it on the farm side. It was because you're mixing family with business and all this other sort of stuff. And I had a really good saying that a friend of mine told me. He actually runs the philanthropic side for Gail Miller in Utah. And he said the saying to me, it was really so true. Don Sterling, great hero of mine, mentor of mine. He said he worked for Mitt at the Olympics and great guy, and worked with us on the Mitt campaign. But he said, Gail Miller once told him, family hard, business hard, family business really hard. And I thought to myself, that sounds like the farm. But so there in the family context, it's always harder, I think, to pull the personal piece out.
Right.
The political context, everything is so driven off of opinion, not necessarily fact based. I get how people can get sometimes super emotional on both the family side or on the family business side or on and I kind of learned that, but I do think people don't do as good a job with that that are in less politically or emotionally charged situations. And I think it's super, because I agree with you 100%. That's the thing that drives me the most crazy about meetings is, hey, look, the passive aggressive stuff is just, it's so bad. Because you're absolutely right. It's not going to move anyone forward personally or as an organization.
I'd rather just know
just
that
say what you got to say and get it out there, and let's figure it out, and let's move on. And that's the other thing I loved is I would say final quick thing is that my dad was really good at this. I mean, he could, first of all, I never really felt like he ever, I can't think of a time in which he, corrected me on the farm. That's a nice way to put it. Where he did it unfairly. Like he didn't just like correct me about whatever if he corrected me, it was something I deserved. Like I can't think of one thing where I wasn't guilty. But what I loved about my dad is he'd say what he had to say. He'd make the correction, and then it was over. Like he didn't hold it over your head.
Right.
And now my mom was a little different on this deal, by the way. And I love my mom. And I'm not making this any sort of judgment because I've seen this role reversal in the genders. I'm not making this male, female. It just happened in this case. My dad was a little bit more about moving on. My mom was not. And I've seen that reversed, by the way, in families.
Totally.
But my point is like that passive aggressive stuff, just saying what you have to say. And I just appreciated that about him because again, it allows you to correct people because they know I knew my dad wasn't going at me personally, and that if I took his correction and just learned from it, it was over. He would let it go and he'd move on. And I think we need more of that in life in general, and I need to be better about that too because sometimes I can, it's hard to forgive and forget. Yeah,
for sure. So I think about all these meetings that you play this huge role in facilitating, even though you're not necessarily like the primary like speaker into the meeting, because you're facilitating it between maybe a client and and or different power brokers or different people and all this stuff. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of somebody who's maybe new to leading meetings in their career. What's a practical piece of advice that you might give that kind of person on how to get better at running meetings?
Well, I think a couple things I think about is I think you have to really have in your mind, what's the purpose? What are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
What's the goal?
Yeah.
Like, what are the action items you want to take out of the meeting? And I think, so knowing kind of the end is very, very important. And then I think you have to involve people in the meeting by asking questions sincerely. Like, what do they think the solution is? And even if you don't agree with that solution, letting people talk it out is helpful. Letting them helping them know that even if you don't, I think it's important when you disagree with somebody. I think most people are better about it if they understand, like, hey, look, we may disagree, but I hear what you're saying.
Yes.
I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I respect what you're saying. I may disagree with it, but it's not because I don't respect what you're saying and I don't understand where you're coming from, and that I can see how you could see it that way.
Yeah.
And then you got to kind of meet me in the middle, that you can see how I'd see it differently. And I think it's really important for a facilitator of a meeting, as they're working through it, they have to always keep in mind, okay, how do we keep this on? What are we trying to accomplish? What are the action items? What do we got to get done here? Where do we want to end to make things happen? So we're not just having a meeting. And then how do you engage everybody so that they can have their say? And even some of the ones that may disagree, they may not disagree as much as you think. They may just want to be able to voice their concerns, say what they need to say. And then as you do that, you also can learn and listen about how you can kind of, and maybe there's more information that they need to assuage their concern.
Well, and
you're not going to know that if you don't ask.
Totally. And sometimes it's not like a binary 0 or 1. Like, sometimes you can go, because I heard what that person had to say, I can actually like tilt this decision by 3 degrees. In a way that makes it a higher quality decision and actually makes them pretty darn happy.
Absolutely. And the other thing too is you may change your mind. Like, maybe there's more information that you learned that you didn't have. I mean, again, you can't just assume you have all the facts. You think you make a decision based on what you know.
Yeah.
But you can always learn more information, and that could change what you think as well.
Yeah.
Again, a lot of these issues are about conflict resolution, making things happen. It means, now you're having arguments over what your moral position on X, Y, and Z is. I get that there's going to have to be.
It's going to be a little harder to move.
It's a lot harder sometimes on those things, and but what we're talking about in terms of business and in terms of solving problems, in terms of accomplishing things, there's always a way to. That's the part I don't. I always say about people in the political world that just makes my head scratch is that. Everyone will criticize sometimes politics, like, oh, you can't make deals. You don't make deals. Well, look, life is about making deals.
Yeah.
Deals with your friends, your family, your business deals. Like,
totally.
And those deals are, you're trying to find a win-win.
Yeah.
Like, I get what as much as I can get, they get as much as they can get. No one's going to just do a deal where you get 100% what you want, I get nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's not how it works in your friendships, your marriages, your relationships. Right. There's just no way. There's compromise. There's all that. And if there isn't, you don't have friendships. You don't have relationships. You don't have marriages.
And you're not
you don't have anything.
Get very far.
Yeah. And so my point on that is, that's why I always challenge some people sometimes when they get so worked up on the political stuff. I'm like, so how do you think that's going to really work in a political context? That you're going to hold out till you get 100% of what you want, and your opinion is right and everyone else is wrong.
Yeah.
Look, I get that you have to hold to your values on certain issues, no problem. I do think we could agree to disagree on those issues and be respectful of each other, even if I see it very differently, even morally, than someone else.
Sure.
But I do think that most of politics is not about those issues.
Yeah.
It's about your tax policy or about what's the best transportation policy or whatever. So that's where you got to go to, how do we get like the best deal done we can get done? And I think that there needs to be more of that and more of an application of how you live in the real world, and not just this theoretical, well, we're off in politics and now I'm watching Fox News and I can just have my opinion and yell at the TV, and that's not how it works. And the reason why this happens...
Well, that's apparently how the media works, but it's not how the real world
works. And that's how,
exactly
and
right.
fomenting this sort of thing. And there's a whole reason for that I won't get off in the subject. I have a theory on that, but I just think I'd like to see more of that application. And I think that's why meetings, back to your overall question, it's a similar thing when you're facilitating a meeting.
Yeah.
How do we get a deal done here? Certain things are going to hold that we got to have that certain people want, no problem. But there's a lot of stuff in the middle to get a deal done at that point. And you know that better than anyone. That's what you do.
Yeah.
And so, hey, we want to get a deal done. We want to find a win-win here. And you got to go in with that mentality. And as a facilitator, I think thinking about what I want to accomplish, I want to try and get a win-win here. And then listening to others, you can, to your point, the 3 degrees, you can figure out where the deal is to be had by that, in my view.
Yeah.
Sometimes there isn't. I mean, sometimes it's just not. It's going to blow up, and I've been in a few of those meetings too, and they're uncomfortable.
Well, we'll just bring you back for another episode for that. So
exactly.
This has been an absolute blast. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I hope it was what you're looking for.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Worst Meeting Ever is brought to you by Contio. What if AI could kill your broken meetings? Find out how at Contio.ai.